Branding isn't just a logo, it's a mindset. A holistic approach shaping identities, experiences, and leadership at every level. Welcome to BrandsTalk with your host, Brigitte Boucousis, where excellence meets purpose. We share insights and lessons to inspire and elevate. Let's dive in. Today's conversation sits at the intersection of something most leaders think they understand, but rarely master: performance, clarity, and execution under pressure. My guest is someone who has lived this at the highest level. A former fighter pilot who now leads a global performance company, he has built and scaled multi-million-dollar ventures while helping organizations like Pfizer, McDonald's, and Specsavers operate with precision in complex environments. What makes his work so compelling is this: he doesn't just talk about high performance, he redefines how we think. Through his concept of thought loops, he challenges the way leaders make decisions, move from intention to action, and ultimately how they show up in their brand. Because your brand is not what you say, it's how you think, decide, and execute consistently. This conversation is about moving from chaos to clarity, from strategy to disciplined execution, and what it really takes to build a brand that performs under pressure. Welcome, Christian Boucousis, or so-called Boo. Welcome to BrandsTalk.
Hey, Bridget, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for being my guest today. You come from a world where performance isn't theoretical. It's immediate, it's precise, and often under pressure. And as a fighter pilot, you operated within a very disciplined thinking system, a continuous loop of actions and reflection. You have translated that into business and leadership through what you call fighter pilot thinking. So what I'd love to explore today with you is how all of this thinking, this precision, this discipline, this adaptability translate into leadership, decision-making, and ultimately into how an identity or a so-called brand is built and experienced. So you have gone from fighter pilot to CEO, helping leaders and teams achieve sustained high performance. Why? Why? Why journey? And what does it teach you? Or did it teach you?
Well, I wish the journey was intentional. It's sort of been an accident for me. Obviously, I wanted to be a fighter pilot since I was a little child, sort of age of 4 or 5. I worked for 17 years, became a fighter pilot. I shouldn't have become a fighter pilot because I've discovered recently, the last few years, that I have ADHD, which explained why I struggle at school. But equally, I was lucky that the flip side of ADHD is intense focus. So everything I needed to be good at, I worked hard to be good at, and everything else I was terrible at. So I did my second year of high school twice. So I did 12th grade twice. Got just the right mark the second time around, a B+ average. And then I joined up at the age of 18 and became a fighter pilot when I was 22. So it was a 17-year journey to achieve a dream. And really why I do what I do now is help other people achieve the same thing. So there's a personal side, which is personally, there's so much more we can achieve than we really understand within ourselves. I think humans are full of hidden potential. And secondly, I do a lot of work with very large enterprise where it's very easy for them to get in each other's way. And I help leaders understand how you break through a lot of the noise and chaos that is running large enterprise and starting to get kind of surprising results. And I call it bigger impact, less effort. The whole framework is fighter pilot thinking. And what's unique about the world of fighter pilots, when you observe the world as a former fighter pilot, you come at the world with two things. One is a huge amount of skepticism. And secondly, it's with curiosity. And there's a lot of people out there that believe they're in the performance space and they use words like high performance and high performance. none of that exists in the world of the fighter pilot. You just do your job, you do it well, and you win 99% of the time. That's the baseline. That's not working hard. Oh, but you do work hard. That's not a surprise. You can actually deliver the things that you say you can deliver. And it does require, and fighter pilots started thinking differently nearly 60 years ago when Colonel John Boyd, who was like a military strategist and former fighter pilot, created this concept called the OODALoop. And really what the OODALoop says is everything that happens has a consequence and the ability to change what you do and what results you get the next time. So that's kind of anchors my thinking, because most humans think a certain way. If you think of it in terms of a brand, if you have a campaign and it's done right, it has an impact. And the loop from a good brand campaign is people engage with the brand and hopefully purchase products and services. And when it comes to marketing, I mean, I've had a journey with I've been in business for 21 years. My first business didn't require any marketing. It was a big projects company. But since then, I've been in publishing. I now am in leadership development, and I work a lot with big brands. I work with organizations like Publicis, one of the world's largest marketing and ad agencies. And what I find fascinating is how often people in marketing think marketing is unsuccessful. People come in with it with a negative view. It's like, oh, it's like a lottery. You just don't know with marketing. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you can't explain it. And I'm like, well, that's nonsense. Like everything doesn't work for a reason, and everything works for a reason. And what happens is we typically shortcut or let our internal negative narrative take over, and we set ourselves up for failure. And that's why we have this concept at Afterburner called flawless execution and flawless leadership. Because what it means is you have to go out the door trying to achieve as close to perfect as possible, understanding that you're not going to be perfect. It ain't going to happen. But you can't go out the door thinking that an average result is a good result. And I think what's happened in society lately in the last few years is we accept mediocrity as the standard. We accept that everything's hard and it doesn't work. And that's when it does work, it's like, yay, rather than the fighter pilot way, which is it works 99% of the time and it's within your control to get those results.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that, the flawless execution and always going out there. Okay, this is it. I want to achieve 100%. And it's true. You always say we settle with that's just good enough, with mediocrity. And as a fighter pilot, you can't go, you cannot run with that. And I myself come from the airline industry, was a flight attendant for several years. And I've seen how pilots are trained and how pilots go to their job. They cannot just say, no, today I'm not doing the checklist. I'm not doing this. Or maybe not, or maybe yes. So this is not possible, right? So there's a completely different mindset behind. Mindset defines the actions that we are taking. So you talk about your concept of thought loops a lot. Can you go deeper into that? What are they and how do they influence the consistency in how a brand shows up? Because branding is not about a one-time thing that you do. You know, it's something that is evolving over time with experience, and you are building up a relationship, trust, and a certain authority in the market, and you make people feel about you as a brand. So how do thought loops go together with brand consistency?
Well, as they say, brand is what people feel about you after you leave the room, right?
And what stays? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when we talk about loops and when we talk about iteration, which is just everything you do can be done a little bit better, the most important part is the discovery as to why things did or didn't go to plan. So the first thing is we have to understand that whatever we do in marketing, whatever we do with brand, we have an intention. Now, the fact that we have an intention to be a great brand, but there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. And as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So we have to turn an intention into a destination. And when you look at the way an airline works, you hop on and you're going on your vacation. You might be heading to Croatia or into Athens. Yeah, so when you get on the aeroplane, the captain says, "Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen." What they don't say is our goal is to get to Athens today. I mean, not. Could you imagine could you imagine how people would feel on an airplane if in aviation we use the word goal instead of destination? So this is the philosophy that's very important to anchor success and to anchor more wins than losses. Is we have to turn an intention into a destination. So you might be a new brand, and your intention is to be the best known brand in the world. Well, the first destination is I want to be the best known brand in my community. Right? That's step one. Because when you're constantly trying to fulfill intentions, you're always bouncing around. You never anchor like the first step. You're just constantly just throwing mud at a wall and hoping that something sticks. So I'll explain it in the way that I explain it in my new book, Flawless Leadership. So you've got to master the 3 M's: mindset, method, and moments. So the mindset starts with intention translated into destination. From there, we have to compare it to our reality, because reality is the only thing that's real. Everything else 1 second ahead of reality is, who knows? It could be anything. So we have to find this ability to, and asking yourself, well, if that's what I need to be in the future, and this is where I am today, what's missing? What's the first thing I need to do? And then that is action, do something. Now, often in life, because the future is unknown, when we try and do something, it might not be the right thing. So the most important part of the thought loops is reflection. And we have to say, well, this is what I wanted. This is my new reality. Is there still a gap there? If so, embrace that curiosity again. I call it intentional curiosity, not general curiosity, because general curiosity just makes everything even worse. So the curiosity is curiosity linked to the destination, and we just iterate every day. You can iterate every hour. In fact, this is the way fighter pilots think. This is how we process information every second. You're always asking the question, why am I not where I need to be yet? And because you're a fighter pilot, you're always headed towards a target. It's just the way you are. And you're always asking questions, which is, what does good look like? Where are we now? Why am I not there yet? And what's one thing I can do in the next 5 minutes that inches me closer?
That reminds me of design thinking, because it's also a concept of constant iterations. It's like refining, always reflecting where I am right now, and does it get me closer to my destination? I love how you reframe that from goal to destination. Yeah, because also when I think as a flight attendant, I was also doing the announcements, and I was also not saying the goal it's the destination. And
You would
I
feel
love
silly.
how,
You would
yeah,
you would feel
you absolutely, yeah. So I like to borrow this concept and use it in business as well, because it's something that is not static, because a goal is somewhere, but a destination already implies something needs to happen. You have to take action. It's something that you are on the move. And this constant iterations, asking yourself these reflections, is getting you closer, hopefully, by doing the right steps towards. And then always reframe, readjust, yeah. A constant evaluation of where you are in the here and now, and drawing the future in the here and now by curiosity. I love that.
And it's
Yeah.
just 4 steps. It's destination, reality, curiosity, and action. That is it. That's all you need to do. And it's that simple for a reason, because the world of the fighter pilot is so fast and complicated and high stakes that if you don't have a simple way to process thoughts, and we have 11 million synapses a second. Like, there's a lot going on in our brain, right? It's our brain is as powerful as 1 million iPhones in terms of processing power. So anything that has that much power, imagine if you put your child in a car with 10,000 horsepower, the most powerful car, and you didn't teach them how to use it properly. And that's the problem as a fighter pilot. you're trained to use your brain in the most optimum way possible in high stakes, complex environments. As a human, no one teaches you how to think. They teach you how to analyze. They teach you how to find a million problems, but problem solving isn't something that we invest in. And if you look at some of the statistics that are starting to emerge society wide now in the US, the last graduating class from high school was the first in history to be less intelligent than the generation before. So we have this problem now where we constantly consume information. We don't challenge it. We take it as what it is because all the algorithms feed existing beliefs. So if I believe that there's an alien that lives next door to me, every time I go to my social feed, I find it feeds me information and say, yeah, aliens live next door to us. It never sends you a piece of information to challenge what you already believe. And when we talk about personal growth, when we talk about brands, and I see this all the time, so many brands get locked down into what they are instead of what they could be. And I recently worked with Nike, the global basketball team, basketball team that market, it's a huge business. And they're constantly struggling with the balance between new and old. It's a big challenge when you're a legacy brand because people know you as something, but you want to be something new. But sometimes the new takes you too far away. And when it takes you too far away, you start to lose business. People start to embrace different brands because no one runs a feedback loop 3 years ago to say, hang on, this move from being a wholesaler to a retailer and embracing fashion means we're now losing all this territory to proper athletic brands like On Running, Hoka. Yeah, you actually create the vacuum yourself by accident. And I think this happens a lot when the big ideas factory runs hot, but no one actually challenges the big idea with reality.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, sometimes there is too far of a stretch for the brain. They leave their core competence, their core, the essence of the brain. So that always needs to be taken into consideration. It's a thoughtful process, bridging, from who we are right now and what we could be. So that needs a lot of intention, a lot of thoughtfulness, meaningfulness, not losing the brain's strength, the power that you already have. It's great that you can work with such big brands and being in this game. Wonderful. This is an adventure, and being supportive in that way coming from your industry, that's amazing. Now, many leaders are also stuck in this overthinking or reacting. Reacting to the market, reacting. How do you train people to move from this hesitation? Okay, when should we take action to actually go into decisive action? How do you do that? How can leaders evolve their thinking fast enough to stay relevant without losing the core of the brand, as we just talked about, or who they are as a person as well? So how can leaders evolve their thinking to stay relevant in these changing market conditions? Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing is you need to think. That's leaders aren't thinking, and they're not thinking because they're slave to their email, their Teams chat, their Slack chat, their WhatsApp. There's no pause for thought. The thing about that 4-step process is, and why it works for fighter pilots is, before we started thinking this way, we were killing thousands of fighter pilots, lots of accidents in combat. It was not going very well for us. So because we had to stop killing people, we were forced to revisit the way that we process information and the way that we grow as people. And that's where iteration came from. So decision-making is also a loop. It's called the decision-making loop. And the reason why it's a loop is we make decisions, but we forget that the decision does impact everybody and impacts ourselves. So if you think about, we recently in my book, I kind of decode the decision-making loop. So step one is perception. So Most businesses and organizations run on feelings and perceptions, not reality. The second step of decision making is mental processing. So we try and find data and numbers that support the way we feel. We'll use words like gut feel. This doesn't feel right, which is nonsense. It's a feeling. So how do you know? The third step of decision making is projection. So we project into the future and we imagine what could happen. So that's the anchor part of decision making. Feelings, finding data to support feelings, and then projecting to the future that doesn't even exist, which is why so many decisions aren't that great, or we avoid them. So the next step 4 in decision making, is actually making the decision. Step 5 is the action. So something happens, and step 6 is the results of the decision. It's the reality of what the decision happens, of what happens as a result of the decision. And then finally, there's the impact. And I call the impact the emotional byproduct of the decisions that you make. So if you're in a relationship and it's not working, one day you're going to make a tough decision and leave. That's a heavy emotional impact. It's unavoidable. Mm-hmm. So what fighter pilots do, and only fighter pilots do this, is we add an 8th step to the decision making, which is reflection. And in psychology, they call this cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's really like think through your thoughts. So think through feelings. And in the debrief, we just deconstruct all of that. Is what I perceived, processed, and projected accurate? Did I get the results that I wanted? If not, why not? And what's one action I can take tomorrow? So when you start to understand this, what you start to do is you bring thought to the subsequent action rather than just keep acting, respond. This is the 30th anniversary of the company that I bought 3 years ago, Afterburner. And we've worked with nearly 3,800 companies. Not one of those 3,800 companies has a practice of reflection. Not one, none. In the Air Force, it's the most important thing we do. Yeah. We say the debrief is more important than the mission. So we flip the whole thing on its head. We say taking the time to reflect on results is more important than the work you do to achieve the result, because the work you do to achieve the result is just guessing, because it's all in the future. Reality is the gold mine for lessons and learning and growth.
That's beautiful. I love the way of how you just explained that, flipping the process, right? The debrief, you learn most from the debrief. Great. Is it also then, because you often speak about from chaos to clarity, where do you see most leaders creating their own chaos when it comes to their brand? Is it also like a debrief, an introspection, or when it comes to the company, an evaluation?
Well, it's a study done in 2016. It was called Just Think. And in the study, they put individuals in a white room with a white chair for 16 to 15 minutes, and all they had to do was think. As they ran through the exercise, they found out that most people didn't really enjoy it. So they came up with another thesis, which was, it's the white room. So we're going to do it again. We're going to get everyone to sit at home for 6 to 15 minutes, and we're going to see whether they enjoyed that. And they were surprised to find that the results were about the same, that they didn't really enjoy it. During the debrief of that second experiment, they discovered that one of the gentlemen on the program cheated and turned on the television and gave them another idea. So they brought everyone back to the white room in the white chair, but this time they put a button on the table, and if they hit the button, they got an electric shock. So here we are, white room, white chair, 6 to 15 minutes. Everyone knows if they hit the button, it's going to hurt. Yet still 75% of men and 28% of women would rather have a severe electric shock than just think for 6 minutes. So that's what creates the chaos in leadership. The chaos is hitting the button all the time, because the button feels like work. It feels like I'm doing something, and when I'm doing something, that's good. The problem is, if you're doing the wrong things, that continues to amplify throughout an organization, and two things happen. We either fail, or more often, things just slow down. stuff just doesn't happen. And the leader has to work extra hard to get the job done. And I have a thesis in my new book called The Perfection Death Spiral. And it's basically a leader who's running an internal narrative of perfection, that I have to get the result. Then they start working with their team, and the team is slower than they are because obviously they're not in their brain. So you have to spend time to bring people on board. So what happens is, what they create in their mind as perfection and what's achievable is completely unachievable. So they start to exert more control. As they start to exert more control, they get busier and busier and busier. The result of that is they start to become overwhelmed. And when you become overwhelmed, your cognitive processes of the brain, they don't work anymore. So the perfect solution starts to fall away further and further. So they try and control more. And they become more overwhelmed, and they get further behind. And then they're working so hard that eventually they burn out, which is why we see year on year leadership burnout increasing and employee engagement decreasing, because the speed of digital, the amount of work that we need to do, and the amount of information that overwhelms us means that this is becoming the intelligence era, the number one problem for leaders. You're just not thinking enough to be able to operate at the speed that this new world requires you to operate at and make decisions.
So how do we get out of that overwhelm?
Same old story. Stop, think, ask yourself one question. Where am I going with this? Like what happens when the effort's expended? I call it the avenger effect. So the superheroes, the avengers, we as humans go to movies to watch heroes save the day. So there's this second subconscious narrative in a leader, which is, my job is to be a hero and save the day. So therefore, I behave in a way where that's what I do. I swoop in, I do the work of my team. The team starts to step back, and you end up with an organization full of superheroes that don't have superpowers. So it doesn't work. So the stop, reflect, get out of the weeds as a leader. If you find yourself doing something, if you find yourself spending all day being updated, what's going on, it's a red flag for you not setting a destination. If you don't know what's going on and you haven't set a destination and you haven't worked with the team to work out the steps to get there, you're always going to be confused. You're always going to be reactive, and you're going to create more chaos. So clarity comes from a destination. If you think of a black night and you need to go somewhere and it's dark, you'll just wander around. You don't know where to go, but put a single point of light in the distance, all of a sudden you have clarity. That's a destination, and you'll walk the right way. It's just chaos if you're trying to lead a group of 10 people without a guiding light.
Okay, got it. Great. And in line with that, you also, as fighter pilots, very much rely on precision, of course, and also trust. Because when you fly in a team, for example, when I watch the Thunderbirds, my heart stops. And what can businesses learn from fighter pilots about precision and trust, especially when it comes to building an identity, building a brand, their personal brand or a company brand, leadership brand, whatever it is? So what can we borrow? Mm-hmm.
If a leader wants to be precise, which to us means that whatever is set on a daily basis is achieved. So precision requires practice, preparation, planning, because you can't be precise if you haven't measured what good looks like. So if you want to cut a precise line in a piece of lumber, you need to draw the line, have the training and practice how to use the saw to create a precise line. So companies, they don't invest in the training, they don't have the skills, and it also requires standards. You have to do the basic things the same way every day. Imagine every day if you had to brush your teeth, tie your shoes, put your clothes on from first principles. Like, how does which hole does my arm go in? What do I do first? Do I put toothpaste on first or second? Do I squeeze the toothpaste into my mouth? But that's how people run businesses. It's literally most of what happens in a business happens the same every single day. But we think that we have to bring this crazy original thinking to basic tasks. And what happens is the basics get done badly and there's no spare brain capacity to be innovative. So you get trapped. When you talk about trust, trust is very easy. And the reason why we lose trust is not on purpose. No one exists each day to be an untrustworthy person. So it's the loss of trust is incidental, and it's the incidental impact of being unable to meet an expectation. That's all it is. So if you set an expectation and it's achieved, what happens? You build trust. If you don't achieve expectation, which happens, it's life, it's going to happen, it's not a big deal, then, and we don't reflect on it, then we just think people are incompetent. We don't actually get to the root cause of why we didn't meet the expectation today. And that's what debriefing is. Debriefing is deconstructing everything and saying, oh, this is why we didn't get it. So that also builds trust, because I now trust that if you don't do something or don't achieve what you set out to achieve, you're going to get curious about it and you're going to try again tomorrow. So humans do two things. This is how we're programmed. One, to set unrealistic expectations, and two, to blame other people when we don't get there. It's kind of weird. I don't know why that's our default program, but that is trained out of the fighter pilot. That whole human survival programming is replaced with this iterative thinking model. That's a core part of being a fighter. And a lot of the people that don't make it to become a fighter pilot, they just can't get out of that. They can't get out of that fixed mindset. They can't grow, and they can't have the humility to say, you know what, failure and making mistakes it's a core part of the journey. But it's not the mistake or the failure. That's the part of that's not the core part of the journey. That's what we think it is. It's the learning that comes from that's the gold.
Yeah, the goal is really always also in every other person's life, this learning from that, right? That's where the goal is. It's what we take away for us and how we evolve, how we become a better version of ourselves and getting closer to our destination that we have set, the 2.0 version, I would say. So from a fighter, So from a fighter pilot's mind, if you had to give one non-negotiable principle for building a high-performing brand in today's world, what would it be?
Reflect. Just stop, because through the act of reflection, you will slowly chip away at areas of your life and your business that isn't working very well. It's as simple as that, but reflect with intent. So reflect relative to your destination. And the first thing that's going to happen for most people, and not everyone they have to be a fighter pilot. There's plenty of people that think this way. Like Elon Musk thinks like a fighter pilot would. He's constantly problem solving and he's very grounded in reality. So the first thing to do is, and what you'll discover in your first debrief is you're not running with enough clarity. You're not running with clear. You probably have, I want to run a marathon. I want to get a bonus. You're probably running with really big goals, but you've got to come all the way back until that becomes a daily destination. 3 things. What am I going to achieve? Not what am I going to do? What 3 things am I going to achieve today? And go out and try, and win, lose, or draw, reflect on each one of those things on a daily basis. Start with yourself, then bring in your team and start doing it with the team.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that invaluable advice. Great. We are almost at the end, Bo. Before we wrap up, I'd love to end with a fun, rapid fire session. I throw out a few terms and you share the first thought that comes up. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Perfection.
Unattainable.
Excellence.
Excellence is the pursuit of perfection, understanding that you're never going to get there.
Yes. Awesome. I like that. Execution.
Execution is the game, but execution requires direction And to create direction, you need destinations.
What do you think about emotions?
Emotions can be regulated. They shouldn't be avoided, but there's a time and a place for emotion, and there's a time and a place for execution. What if you try to execute and be emotional at the same time, you become hyper emotional and your execution falls away. So as a fighter pilot, we understand that if the engine catches fire, that's not time to be emotional. I'll deal with that later. Just get the airplane back on the ground, and then we unpack the emotion in the crew room later. So you can package emotion, and the more you package the emotion, the more emotionally regulated you are when you unpack it later.
I remember that. My next term, emergency.
Emergencies should be something that you can't control rather than the byproduct of what you can control. And one of the phrases we hear a lot in business is, I spend my whole life firefighting as a leader. So firefighting is an emergency. All the fires were lit by the leader and the team. So stop lighting fires, put the matches away, and start being more intentional and reflective each and every day.
Good, yeah. And lastly, brains. What does a brain stand for in your mind?
A brand? It depends. I think a brand needs to be consistent, and it needs to be honest. I think when the brand starts to get clever, or a brand starts to get too into people's mind, then all of a sudden, and most importantly, a brand should serve. A brand should mean something to someone to enable them to meet one of their life objectives.
Thank you so much. Boo, you have a book coming up. It's going to be launched. When is it going to be launched? In June, right? It's called Flawless Leadership.
So
yeah, Flawless Leadership. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so the book is really a book to help leaders navigate life and navigate leadership. It helps understand the difference between being flawless and being perfect. It labels all of the things that affect us, like the avenger effect, personalitis, the perfection death spiral. So once we label these things and we understand it, we start to understand why this practice of reflection is so important. And it helps a leader master what I call the 3 M's of leadership: mindset, method, and the moments that we show up as a leader.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope it's going to be a bestseller for sure.
You and me both.
And we're going to promote that with our podcast as well. So thank you so much for being my guest today to let us borrow your fighter pilot's mind. And I'm so grateful that we all can learn from you and borrow that and bring that into the business world, into leadership. Thank you so much for being my guest today, Bo. Thank you.
Pleasure, Bridget. Thanks for having me. I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow on your favorite app, share it with your network, and leave a quick review. Stay tuned for the next episode and keep shining.